I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
Birthday to you. CJ, you're 40 now. You put your age out there. I'm allowed to put your age. Happy birthday. Well, belated birthday at this point. Your birthday was over the weekend. I'm glad I was able to sing happy birthday to you to start off this podcast. And I sure hope Jesse doesn't cut it off because of some copyright BS or anything like that. But happy birthday, CJ.
Thanks, buddy. It's a big one. It was a good day. And I'm feeling good, though. I decided, it's funny, you say the topic of putting the number out there. I just decided to own it. Like, that was my approach to this because, first of all, I have enough good friends that have substantial followings in the hockey sphere, the Twitter sphere, that I knew one or more of them were going to out me anyway and you know, and put some birthday wish out on Saturday. And so I just got ahead of it. I was like, you know what? I feel great. I don't feel bad about this. I'm not having any sort of existential dread about seeing that first number go to a 4 from being a 3. And so I just figured, you know what, why not own my own stuff? And so here I am. I'm 40.
How does it feel being a 40-year-old? Like, I imagine it's cool, right? I'm nowhere near that yet.
You know, obviously it doesn't feel any different than 39, like practically speaking. You know, the last pod we did, I was 39. I don't feel any different today, but you know, it's huge. Like, I remember my dad celebrating his 40th birthday. Like, I was a little kid, but like, I remember it was a big deal and they had a party and it sticks in my mind. And so like, it is definitely a reminder of the passage of time. I'd be lying if I said not, but you know, as I say, I feel like I'm in a really good spot in my life. I'm so pumped to be doing this with you. And obviously the other changes we've made, we've talked about in other weeks, like physically, I feel great. Mentally, I'm clear. So, you know, I'm not going anywhere just yet, even though I got that 4-0 tagged on me.
And we don't want you to go anywhere, man. Like we said at the beginning of the podcast, like, the brand has never been stronger, man. And a lot of people have been wishing you happy birthday on Discord, on Twitter. By the way, the SDPN Discord, it is hot right now. Go join that SPDN.ca. SDPN.ca. I know how to spell the Steve Dangle Podcast Network. SDPN.ca is where you can join the Discord if you want to wish CJ happy birthday and also ask questions for a future Ask CJ segment, which we will get to before the end of the show. But we have a lot we got to get to. The Brady Tkachuk news dropped while we were doing our last podcast. We'll tie a bow on that. There's a report going around surrounding the Montreal Canadiens GM Marc Bergevin, where he may end up. We'll also plug the latest from CJ from the Toronto Star. But there's one particular story that kind of reared its head during the weekend. And it's the story of Alex Bishop. He's a goaltender who plays at the University of Toronto. He was signed to a amateur tryout contract by the Toronto Maple Leafs. Was made available to them because essentially cap constraints with the situation going on there and some of the injuries that have plagued. I believe Peter Mrazek is kind of sidelined for the foreseeable future. The Leafs were eventually able to call up Michael Hutchinson, but a lot of noise has been made as a result of the call up of Alex Bishop and the fact that the Leafs were in a position where they had to essentially dress a goalie to an ATO contract. Like, I'm a bit amazed at the fact that it's the Leafs all of a sudden that now we're starting to have discussions about whether or not they should be in that position or we should have a soft cap. CJ, if you can, just kind of give us the finer details of this situation and your thoughts on what's out there and this whole situation.
Well, there's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, in the general, population, even among some of my media colleagues here in Toronto, about what went on here, I believe. I mean, a lot of people took this as an opportunity, kind of the low-hanging fruit, to take a shot at the Leafs front office, at their cap management, at the fact that it's the first weekend of the season and they're in this situation. But, I think that actually shows a lack of understanding of what they did. And here's what's interesting. I mean, the Leafs, like a lot of other top teams that have, high price talent on the roster, they are obviously flying very close to the salary cap ceiling at $81.5 million. Like, in a completely healthy environment, where they don't have injuries or other things that might, change this fact, they can only carry 21 skaters, even though teams are permitted to have rosters up to 23, just because They don't have any, they don't have any collection of 23 players that would be under that salary cap ceiling. And so, yes, they don't have a ton of flexibility when it comes to the cap, but, what they did is it's actually a first. Other teams, many teams over the years, including Vegas last year 10 times, Colorado already this season, the Calgary Flames way back in 08 and 09. That's actually the reason this rule exists. It's called 50.10 bracket E in your collective bargaining agreements for those scoring at home. That came to be because the 08-09 Calgary Flames had to play their last 5 games of the season short because of cap issues. They actually ended up losing the division title to Vancouver that year by 2 points because they were playing with 15 skaters the last couple of games. And, the league then created a rule where if you're short for one game, you can make emergency recalls to not have it so that you're short for multiple games in a row of players. But no one had ever done it with a goaltender is all I'm saying. So it's happened with forwards and defensemen in the past. The Leafs elected to do it with a goaltender. And the reason they did that is because now that they sort of took their medicine on Saturday, it worked out fine, right? Jack Campbell played that game, came through healthy. Alex Bishop got lots of shine. I spoke to him actually on Sunday and, he was still pumped. Like, I don't think his feet had touched the ground yet, even though it was a day later, and getting to be part of an NHL team for a day. But now the Leafs have been able to call up Michael Hutchinson, and he doesn't count on their cap until Mrazek's healthy again. And so for 5 or 6 games now, the Leafs actually have more salary cap flexibility than they would have if they didn't do it this way. They have 13 forwards that are healthy. They have 7 defensemen that are healthy, and they now have 2 NHL goaltenders on the roster until Mrazek is healthy. And so, they could have done certain things. This doesn't maybe translate well to a podcast. We almost need like a telestrator board to really hammer this point home. But, take my word for it, because I do understand the dynamics here. They could have sent down, for example, Timothy Liljegren or Rasmus Sandin on Saturday, called up Michael Hutchinson the regular way. And so they would have then played short a defenseman. They would have had 2 NHL experienced goaltenders that night. But then for these future games, first of all, they'd be 1 injury away from being short again. And they also wouldn't have the ability to recall Liljegren or Sandin because of the way the rules work. And so in this case, they're recalling the goaltender they wanted, and they're actually gaining extra lineup spots and fitting under the cap. And so, by no means am I celebrating the fact that they ended up in this position, because that wasn't the plan. It only happened because Ilya Mikheyev got injured, Austin Matthews got injured, Justin Hall got sick, so sick he couldn't play in a game with a non-COVID illness. And all that happened in a really short period of time, plus Mrazek's injury. But I actually think they handled it quite well, and they actually come out of it in a better spot than where they entered it. And they're no worse for wear. And so they're getting ridicule on Twitter and in some of spots of the media here. I actually think they're going to get mimicked in by other NHL teams at some point. And other NHL teams might say, what's the real risk? Because it's only 1 game, right? And sure, it would have been probably the best situation if Alex Bishop had to come into that game as a goalie that plays normally in U Sports in the Canadian university system. But, okay, so you lose that 1 game, and then you've got multiple games now where you got more flexibility. And the odds are, goaltenders don't leave games injured all that often. I mean, it certainly happens, but it's not that common of an occurrence. And so, it was something new. I think that it's actually quite smart what they've done. And all the people that are sitting here kicking them for it, I mean, I just don't get it. I mean, they won the game, and now they're in a much better position than where we could go to in terms of managing their roster.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. It worked out for them. Michael Hutchinson is on the team, the guy they wanted anyway, and it's not going to count towards the cap if I have that right. I have that right?
Yeah, he's literally called a $0 recall. Like he doesn't count anything on the cap until Mrazek's healthy. And then once Mrazek's healthy, obviously, if they kept him on the cap or on the roster, he would still count against the cap. But at that point, we just assume Michael Hutchinson goes back to the American Hockey League and everyone moves along here. And so, I do think it's an example of good cap management under difficult circumstances versus, the Leafs are idiots. And, the way it's being painted, honestly, is comical. Like, it shows such a lack of understanding of the dynamics of the CBA. And again, we're going to see this multiple times this season with multiple teams. As I mentioned, Colorado already had that because they've been dealing with COVID cases. They had a suspension to Gabriel Landeskog. They got a couple other injuries. And so they were in that spot. Vegas signed Pietrangelo last year, and then they had to play 10 of their 56 games short at least 1 man and a couple short more than one time. So, this is just a reality of the flat cap world, and it gets more attention, maybe more eyeballs, more voices because it's Toronto, but this has been happening and it's going to continue happening.
I was talking about this with my friend Justin Cuthbert from the Iowa Sports Hockey Podcast, and he seemed a little bit disenchanted at these like e-bug stories, like the guys like Alex Bishop coming into a situation. We know he didn't play, but like we've seen that happen. We've seen the David Ayres thing happen. Scott Foster a couple of years ago in Chicago. Like, do you still think that's like a cool story to tell? Like, oh, hey, the random kid off the street ends up on a team because of an injury that's there and they have to sign a guy to an ATO. Like, do you still think those stories are cool to report on? Like, it's still interesting to you? Like, how do you feel about that?
I love these stories, and look, I'm not impervious to the idea. Look, there's two things that could happen that will make these stories much less cool. One day, one of those goaltenders goes in and lets in like 12 goals or something absurd that sort of embarrasses the league or makes the whole thing look really Mickey Mouse. Or second, if one of them, and Scott Foster is an accountant, David Ayres works or is an arena manager, one of these guys goes in and gets actually injured or hurt in a meaningful way that they can't perform their day jobs afterwards. I mean, they're for a period afterwards. I think that sort of takes maybe some of the charm away. But, at least with Alex Bishop, he's 24 years old. He's in good shape. He's 6'4". He played in the QMJHL for parts of 3 seasons. This isn't a nobody, and it's not, not someone of David Ayres' age. And I say that with respect because David Ayres is about the same age I am, but maybe a little less risk in that regard. And who can't put ourselves in his skates in a sense? I mean, I never played high enough level hockey. I'd be considered for any e-bug type of situation, but there are beer league goaltenders out there, or lots of guys who played in the Canadian Hockey League, or maybe got to the East Coast League, but didn't ever get quite to their dreams. And this is a version of that. What Alex Bishop told me on Sunday when we spoke is like, he gets a jersey with his name on it. He's looking to get a copy of the contract, that amateur tryout agreement you mentioned. He gets the game puck. He gets this whole day of Jack Campbell, who literally might be one of the most pure humans you could ever meet, like sitting beside him and talking him through it. His parents were in the crowd. 13 or 14 of his University of Toronto Varsity Blues teammates got tickets. They literally just bought them on the bus when they were driving back from a game in Guelph and all came to the game.
That's funny.
Like, all his buddies are in the crowd. His girlfriend lives in New Brunswick. He told me she had a party for everyone. I mean, like, what a cool moment, because look, this guy has worked hard through his career. He obviously dreamed of being an NHL goaltender. He actually told me that dreams recently. He's kind of, he made peace with the fact that it's probably not going to happen given his age. And I think he's probably, after this is his final season at university, going to enter the workforce in a different way. I mean, but he got there for a day, right? And I get why some people might be cynical, and we have heard it and seen it before, but I think that's pretty cool. And if you can't recognize how neat that is, I mean, it always takes crazy circumstances too, right? Like, it's not like, yeah, there's been a lot of them, but we're talking about a number of experiences happen over like 10 years. Like, it's not like there's 5 a season. So, I'm not sick of the story. I do think we'll get to a world, I should say too, Julian, parenthetically, that probably where every team's allowed to carry 3 goalies. And so you're going to lose some of these stories because I think teams will just have a third goaltender. And so it won't quite be the romance or the storybook story, but, why not let someone have their day? Because, it's something that, Alex Bishop was saying, like the most special part for him is all these people in his life that, have helped him get to the point, got to sharing it with them. And, what else is life about than that?
That's a really good way of putting it. Also, the silver lining to, if we ever get to a world where NHL teams will carry 3 goalies all at once, there's some goalie in the system of some particular team who won't necessarily just get squeezed out and just be a journeyman between the AHL and the ECHL. It might end up working for them. They might get more time somewhere. So, yeah, I mean, while I understand, maybe there could be a reality where we see fewer Alex Bishops. A guy like a Michael McNeven, for example, might have more of a time in the pro level somewhere with some team. So there's always a silver lining to these things. Also, I should plug the fact that your conversation with Alex Bishop is in your latest Inside the NHL column, which can be read in the Toronto Star, among other things.
The poor guy had to take time off. He's studying for a midterm to take my call and do that interview.
Jeez.
So, I mean, like, he said, I think his exact words are, "I'm in one right now." He said he had a big presentation Monday, midterms on Tuesday and Thursday. Like, his phone, won't stop going bananas. You can imagine being in that spot. He just had the Saturday night of his life. And so let's hope his teachers show him some grace this week, because it might not be the best way to prep for some big tests.
I don't think there's a way where you can go to your prof and be like, "Hey, I can't do this exam on Monday because I have to go sit on the bench for the Leafs. I don't know how that works. I don't know if that works at all.
I'm not saying he should get an excused absence, but maybe just be if there's any judgment calls on his test, just give him a little grace. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know. It's worth a shot, I guess. I'm not Alex Bishop, but hey, maybe he's thought of it. Maybe he hasn't. Another report that's kind of come around over in the last little bit, and I've seen it a lot more kind of popping up in my neck of the woods in Montreal. It's the future of Marc Bergevin. We've spoken about the future, what's been speculated out there, or at least just what we think about it with regards to his position as general manager. In Larry Brooks's latest in the New York Post, he mentioned a little tidbit on Bergevin, basically kind of paraphrasing here. Don't be surprised if more and more links between Marc Bergevin and the Los Angeles Kings pop up. For context here, Bergevin is in the final year of his contract as general manager of the Montreal Canadiens. A lot of questions being surrounded whether the fact he will actually return. Every time he's been asked about it, he's basically been non-committal. As for LA, the president just happens to be the greatest left winger of all time in Luc Robitaille. That is until Alexander Ovechkin eventually takes his place atop the throne, but right now it's Luc Robitaille. But there is some links between Marc Bergevin and the Los Angeles Kings. I was just curious if you had any intel on that, any thoughts on that. What do you make of this link between Marc Bergevin and Los Angeles?
Well, I don't have any specific intel on Bergevin and Los Angeles itself or the job that Larry Brooks has reported on here, but we should note a couple of things. Larry Brooks is, he's in the Hockey Hall of Fame in the writer's section and is very respected for his work. He's not someone known just for throwing, random ideas in his head out there. So, I suspect there is some smoke to this idea. And really what it hammers home for me, Julian, is just what this season could entail in Montreal, because, it's just one rumor. He's not saying that this is a done deal or anything. It's sort of, right. Hey, there's some thought that there could be, a fit here. And, I think that the longer Marc Bergevin goes without a contract extension with the Montreal Canadiens, especially if the team struggles, which, they're 0-3 out of the gate as we're recording this, it's going to take on more stories like this one about where he might land or what might happen or who might replace him. And so, I think that there's the high potential here for off-ice kind of drama or, distraction. I don't know how you want to phrase that best. And I don't see him signing by now. I mean, look, there was discussions with Jeff Molson, the owner of the Canadiens, and Marc Bergevin going back to, last season, like almost a year ago now, on an extension. And for whatever reason, they didn't get it done. Then the team goes on this run through the playoffs, reaches the Stanley Cup final. I don't think too many people envisioned that for them, even when the playoffs began, when they were down in the first round, of course. And then the summer happens and they don't get the extension done. The Canadiens announce about a week before the season starts that they're not going to negotiate during the season with Marc Bergevin. I mean, I think this is just the beginning of these types of rumors. And my understanding really is that he wants to be paid among the elite general managers in the league. And there's GMs making $4 to $5 million plus. And so that's kind of, I know that's a big range, but that's the general range you're probably looking at here. And, if he doesn't get that in Montreal, I don't, it's pretty clear he's comfortable playing out his contract and seeing, where else he might work. And you have to remember, like, this is someone who's, Montreal might be the most intense media market in the NHL. I think just because of the two language factor is a factor. You have a very competitive set of French speaking reporters, and there's a big crew of yourself, reporting in English as well. And it's a small town in the sense that there isn't really a number two sport. I mean, with respect to the soccer team and the Alouettes, like the Montreal Canadiens are the show in town. In a market like Toronto, the Raptors do get attention. The Blue Jays get attention, of course. There's tons on the Maple Leafs too. And so I think that might be the most high pressure job in some ways, or the most visible. And, if you're Marc Bergevin, you don't get the amount of money or the contract that makes sense there. Maybe just look and say, like, hey, I can go work somewhere else. It's not going to be that same level of public scrutiny. You might not get that kind of money somewhere else then, but maybe it's time for a fresh start. I mean, I think it's reasonable to think that. I mean, he's been the GM of this team for almost a decade, and that's a long time in that environment. It's very difficult to do. The team's had, a fair bit of success. I think he's shown himself, particularly in his trades, that he's come out on the right side of those more often than not. And so, this franchise feels like it's at a point where something's going to happen. And I have to believe Bergevin won't be their general manager next year. Obviously, there's a circumstance where that could change. Maybe his boss is picking up the phone right now and offering a contract in the range that we just discussed there, and this all gets done. But given how long it's dragged on without that conclusion, I think it points to an eventual separation here. And, maybe the Kings do make sense. I mean, certainly has some ties to people in Los Angeles. He's known to be quite close with Pat Brisson, for example, a CAA, but he's based in LA. I'm not sure about his relationship with Luc Robitaille, but I think it's reasonable to assume they would know each other. I mean, the hockey world's small. Everyone knows each other. And so, I think if Bergevin moves on from the Canadiens, there will be lots of different things put in front of him. And, maybe it's the best thing for everyone to have that separation. But right now we're in the middle spot where, he's still there, but this is all going to be in the air. And I think we'll hear a lot of these stories the longer this sort of goes unresolved.
By the way, before we just wrap a bow on the Bergevin topic here, considering how crazy the 2021 calendar year has been for the Montreal Canadiens, having it end with their general manager deciding he's not going to come back to the team, that just, I mean, at this point, if you have a bingo card with the Montreal Canadiens and this crazy year they've been going through, that maybe that's there, maybe that isn't. That just would kind of cap off what I think has just been the wildest 12 months I have ever seen a professional organization, at least in hockey, go through. This is the wild offseason they had in the bubble. After the bubble, post-bubble, trying to go through a 56-game season, a year where it starts off really great, then goes into the crapper, then eventually rises up to get up again in time for a Stanley Cup final run, the Logan Mailloux ordeal, and that's
a self-inflicted gunshot wound. That one, though,
absolutely, no reason
to relitigate that, but like that was unavoidable, that was avoidable rather.
Absolutely. But the point I'm just trying to say is that if you've been following the Montreal Canadiens pretty much since January on to now, it feels as if at some point there is some story that has popped up that you're just like, wow, you're just trying to find a way to get your head wrapped around it. And having this year end, whether the season or the calendar year end, with Marc Bergevin decided, you know what, I'm going to take my talent somewhere else. I think that would just cap off some of the craziest. I mean, I can't think, unless you could think of another instance in your journalism career where you've seen wilder things over a team over the course of a year. I can't think of any other team that's gone through this much in that period of time.
How I look at it is they've been the biggest story in hockey on a lot of days. League wide, like more days than you would expect. Every team gets that, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for bad reasons, at some point during a calendar year. But that's been Montreal, whether it's, the day Claude Julien is fired in season,
that too.
Coaching changes are big news. On the very serious end of things, they had Jonathan Drouin stepping away, quite surprisingly to those of us on the outside at the time. We've had Carey Price step away from the team here in recent months. In the summer, you had Carey Price being exposed to Seattle in the expansion draft. You had the news emerge that Shea Weber's career is in serious question, and certainly that he won't play this season. You had a COVID outbreak at one point last season among the players, and they were shut down. Then you had Dominic Ducharme, the head coach, get COVID and have to miss a game in the Stanley Cup final because of a quarantine attached to it. And I'm sure I'm missing something else. I mean, that's just off the top of my head. And so, it's been
Marc Bergevin, I think before the Stanley Cup final, had to address the Chicago Blackhawks situation that's been unraveling over the last few months as well. He, of course, has denied any involvement with what's going on. We need to put that out there. But yeah, you're right. There have been more days than not where the Montreal Canadiens have been the topic of discussion over this past year. And
no wonder Arpin Basu at The Athletic is just such a must read, because you're talking about a guy with the great talent and perspective and information, but also, a story to tell, because there's been a lot of stories to tell.
Absolutely. And a stick tap to my colleague as well, Marc-Antoine Godin, who I've been reading since high school, who has also been doing some great work covering the Montreal Canadiens on the French side. I guess this is the point where I say subscribe to The Athletic.
I was going to say, you just inadvertently punched Marc-Antoine in the gut there by saying you've been reading him since high school. So,
well, shit, geez, I legit have been reading him since high school. I would have in my French class in high school, my French teacher would have these La Presse newspapers across class, and I would always grab one and go to the sports section. And before he joined The Athletic, he was at La Presse, I would read Marc-Antoine all the time. I don't think I've ever even told him that, but sorry.
I hope he listens to the pod.
I hope he listens to the pod as well. Brady Tkachuk. We mentioned him during our last podcast. We were fortunate enough to not record a show and miss that. We were able to get him on. We were able to get that tidbit on the show. Is there any other set of details from the whole negotiation process or the aftermath of it that we didn't really get to in the last episode that we want to get to today?
Sure. I think what's interesting to me, Julian, is, ultimately, I think what happened here to get this deal done is you had a player that didn't want to miss any time. And right. Yes, Brady Tkachuk's missing a couple games to start the season, but in the big scheme of things, he's not really missing much time. And so, when it got to last week, as the NHL regular season was set to begin, I think that the circumstances were there where the team didn't want him to miss time. He didn't want him to miss time, sort of as we talked about in prior episodes. At the start of the year, I think really was a deadline that pushed some movement. And, what's interesting to me is that the Senators themselves really stuck to their guns on a long-term contract. I mean, there were options, I think, to them to do a shorter deal here. Maybe would ended it a little bit quicker, but they really were quite strong in their convictions that this had to be a long-term deal, that they wanted to remove any questions about his future at the franchise. I mean, if you sign a 3-year contract, for the first minute, everyone reports he signed a 3-year contract, and then everything becomes about, well, what happens in 2 years, and is he going to leave, and is it a sign he doesn't believe in this rebuild or this management group, what have you. And so, I think what's interesting is that they really remain steadfast in that, and ultimately, made him the highest paid player on the team with a little bit more of a cap hit than Thomas Chabot to get it done. The other part the one thing that maybe we don't think about in negotiations is it sounds like what really made a difference here is Pierre Dorion had suggested to the agents for Brady Tkachuk from Newport Sports, why don't we meet in the middle, like quite literally? And they met in Belleville, where the Senators have an AHL franchise. And so the Newport group drove from Mississauga near Toronto. Senators management group drove from Ottawa. And, I guess that investment in time is a little different than a phone call, right? So everybody's in 2 hours in the car or maybe even more coming from Toronto, depending what time of day you leave. And so you've already put that time in. Then you got to sit down. I mean, it just makes it so, does either side really want to make this a waste of time, or let's get some work done? And, it sounds like that conversation went on about 3 hours. I think that's really where the framework of the deal was made. I know he didn't, it was another day and a half before it became official, but, I think that's where the sort of the impasse or stalemate ended. And my goodness, ever since he signed, like, you can just feel the excitement and the energy around the Senators organization. I think they did a smart thing, honestly, by insisting on the long-term deal. They had to give him a lot of money and all that sort of stuff to make it happen. But I do think, it's worth it, because this is going to be the next captain of their team. I do know he's been skating with the group ever since he got to Ottawa last week. On Saturday, he took the trainers out for a lunch. They were in Toronto on a road trip. Like, just small gestures like that, I think it sort of show why he's captain material. His teammates love him. You can see the excitement when they introduce him there before their home opener. And so, I think it's one of these ones. It was a difficult negotiation, definitely frustration built up on both sides when it went through. But, that all got flushed pretty quickly and started with that face-to-face meeting in Belleville and, getting him to sign long-term. And, now he's going to be the face of the franchise, in my opinion. I think he'll be the next captain. Sort of goes from Alfredson to Erik Karlsson, and now it'll be Brady Tkachuk next in line.
Yeah, if you're an Ottawa Senators fan, you are wiping the sweat off your brow. Phew, this guy's locked up for the foreseeable future. Also, I loved the introduction. I think it was during the Leafs Sens game, where he's just shown and he's just amped up, ready to go. The WWE style promo. I love it.
Yeah, and he leaned into it, right? Like, that wasn't put on. Like, this is, I think that you get a window. If you don't know Brady Tkachuk, you get a window into what kind of guy he is. I think he just loves the game, appreciates his position and station in life. And I think he's excited to be part of that team too. As much as, at times it's been easy to take shots at the Senators. Obviously, a lot of crazy stuff's gone on there in the last 4 or 5 years since they reached the Eastern Conference Final in 2017. But they have a pretty promising stable of young players. Now they're getting these guys signing up long-term, like Thomas Chabot did, Drake Batherson, Brady Tkachuk. I expect they'll get on to Josh Norris next. He's in the final year of his entry-level contract. And, I think that they'll give this group a run together and allow them to grow into players together. And, they got a fun-loving guy in Brady Tkachuk to keep things light over a long season, because you do need players like that on a team for sure.
The Ottawa Senators, man, they're on the up and up.
Don't sleep on them.
Don't sleep on the Ottawa Senators. They're aiming for the playoffs this year. Don't sleep on.
They need to get.
I don't
They
know
need
if
to
they'll
get
do it, though.
saves. They need to get
Yes.
saves. That's my view. I mean, and look, I just watched 2 games they played. Anton Forsberg played great in both games. One a win, one a loss. They've got a young goaltender coming, Gustafsson, but Matt Murray started the year with an illness unrelated to COVID, so he hasn't played just yet. But I think how he performs could make or break the standings points needed to really be in that playoff hunt or not. And he needs a bounce back campaign after his first year in Ottawa.
For sure. If they're not a playoff team this year, which I don't have them as a playoff team this year, maybe next year. It's not too far off for the Ottawa Senators. I know we're at the point where Adam Wild wants us to be a 30-minute show, but we failed him once again. Sucks to suck, Adam. I actually meant to start a timer today, but I forgot when we got going. So I try to look at the clock and here's the thing, man. We don't purposely we try. Yes, there was the whole idea we wanted to be 30 minutes. This is a good show. You say a lot of gems, CJ. I don't want to cut you off and be like, hey, don't tell us, don't inform us. What do you want me to do?
Do you know what we should do at the 30-minute mark? It'd be awesome if we could have a ceremonial minute for Adam, all right. It's sort of like when a soccer team marks a certain minute, because of something that happened in their history with a chant or whatever. Be like, all right, this is the point where you want us to stop, big boss man, but we're going to keep on just trucking through.
See, to our production, King Jesse Blake, can we just have a production note where every time we reach the 30-minute of recording, we get some kind of bell where we just know
ding.
it's the 30
just a sound ding.
Yeah, that's it. It's okay, this is supposed to be a 30-minute show. We obviously did not respect that. We'll just give a minute where we'll just be like, hey, remember when this was supposed to be a 30-minute show, and just dump all over that. Well, at the very least,
are we in trouble though? I can't tell because he doesn't seem to love this though, Adam.
And here's the thing. He
is the boss man. Let's be real about this.
I mean, yes.
We're the new guys on the scene here. We got Andrew Berkshire, who's got a little bit less tenure than us, but I mean, we're playing with some fire here on the SDPN.
Here's the thing, right? Adam, I think the world of Adam. He gets things done, but he's not Chris Johnston. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If there's someone who could go over 30 minutes, I think you're able to do that. Not to mention a lot of people, especially underneath some of those tweets that Adam puts out there where he seems to be angry about the fact that we go over 30 minutes. A lot of people are saying, hey, go longer than 30 minutes, go an hour long. I think we need to give the people what they want as far as I'm concerned. So
that's true. I just don't know. Has Adam realized that he's paying us double time once we get to 30 minutes? Everything after that, we're getting paid bonus now. So this is overtime.
CJ, you and I should probably have a conversation about that
offline.
So ends on that. That's probably an offline conversation to have when it comes to being paid. We're in October, football season well underway. No better time than now, if you haven't already started in September, to get yourself some skin in the game than by using BetMGM. They are the exclusive betting partner of The Athletic. And if you're a fan of The Athletic like I am, you can bet $10 to win $150 plus a free 3-month subscription or extension to your subscription to The Athletic when you bet with BetMGM using our promo code. Just sign up at betmgm.com and use the promo code The Athletic Pod at checkout to take advantage of this special offer from the king of sportsbooks. That's The Athletic Pod. That's the promo code. You bet $10 and you could win $150 and also a 3 months free subscription or extension to your subscription for The Athletic. BetMGM.com and use the promo code The Athletic Pod. New customer offer. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions.
21 years of age or older to wager. Arizona, Colorado, Washington, D.C., Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia only. Excludes Michigan disassociated persons. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, Washington, D.C., Nevada, Wyoming, and Virginia, 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-GAMBLER in Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Call or text the Tennessee Red Line 800-889-9789 in Tennessee or call 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana.
Powered by OfficePools.com, all of the Athletic hockey shows are giving you a chance to participate in their pools. And if you do that, it looks as if you can get yourself some really cool prizes. OfficePools.com, if you haven't already heard of them, they were launched in 1995 as the first website that allowed people to manage a hockey pool online instead of waiting for the scores to be posted on the bulletin board or the company fridge. Remember those times when you went to an office and you had to go to a bulletin board to figure out what's going on? Those are really, really weird days. But now we're at the age now where we have Slack. I don't know. Anyway, here's some of the prizes you could win if you join the Athletic Hockey Pool powered by officepools.com. You are automatically entered to win a PS5 or an Xbox Series X, which one of your choice if you get the opportunity to win. First, second, and third place, you can also get some signed jerseys from players like Sidney Crosby, John Tavares as well. We'll get exact details on some of the other jerseys as well coming soon. But yeah, a lot of really cool jerseys you can win. Go to officepools.com, sign up, and join the Athletic Hockey Pool and make your picks for your chance to win some fantastic prizes. Well, you've been waiting on these ads. We finally have Manscaped ads on the Chris Johnston Show. Will we ever get Chris to do one of these? Probably not, but that's okay. I think I've got an idea of how to do these ads. I've heard so many of them on the Steve Dangle podcast. One day I was even listening to Adam go about this, and I'm like, why is Adam talking about balls so much? I don't need to hear it that much. But I had heard about Manscaped from so many other places. I'm like, you know what? Damn it. I'm just going to order from Manscaped and see what it's like. And I'll tell you what, the package they gave me, pretty good. Pretty good. That package includes the Lawnmower 4.0, and it's really good. Dudes, it's really good. Manscaped, they're the global leaders in male grooming, and they're trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. Do not get chirped this year for having a Jumbo Joe bush below the waist. And I'm just going to peel back the curtain here. That line actually says that, a Jumbo Joe bush below the waist. Join the Manscaped movement for all your hairiest grooming needs and get 20% off plus free shipping with the code CHRIS21 at manscaped.com. And get yourself a Lawnmower 4.0. The 3.0 is pretty good. The 4.0, that's where it's at. Okay, it is time for a segment that I love, and I know CJ loves as well. And you've probably had your question answered in the Inside the NHL column on the Toronto Star. But we like to give the opportunity for everyone else who listens to the CJ show to get their shine as well.
I should let
Ask
you know,
CJ.
too,
Yes.
The response to this has been more than I would have guessed, if I'm being honest, through 2 weeks. And there is some discussion about maybe even that I'll have a mailbag that'll appear in the Toronto Star, like even separate to this. With some of the spillover questions. So, I mean, it will all be dependent on demand. Like, I'm not going to force it. If people don't want to bother throwing stuff out there, I'm not going to force them. But if the avalanche of questions keep coming every weekend, you might get some answered in the Inside the NHL column on Monday morning, some answered on our Monday afternoon podcast on the CJ show, and then maybe a mailbag midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that. So, I think that the point is, I want to be there for you guys because, you and I, Julian, like we got a great process down. We talk about what we think people want to hear about, but, we don't always know what the people want. And so I think it's important that the audience is being heard and being part of this conversation with us.
Absolutely. You got to give the people what they want. Imagine putting this man to 30 minutes. Sheesh. Anyway, I got the handful of questions here. For future reference, you can go on our Discord. You can tweet at Reporter Chris. Reporter Chris on Twitter. I don't know what's going on with my English today. Jeez, it's slipping up today. That's why you got to drink water.
Your English is still better than my French, bud.
I hope so. Here are some of the questions we got. Again, on Discord, on Twitter. Just send us questions, and every Monday we will get to them. First one from Congo Red on Discord. What are some must-have equipment for your jobs in media that you can't live without? For example, something you make sure is packed. Have a story about forgetting some equipment. So I guess it could be like anything, like a notebook or laptop or recorder or just like essentials. Like that GQ YouTube series where it's like, here, I could never go anywhere without my essentials. Like this is your time to show off the essentials you have.
Well, so I've always believed that less is more. Like I want to have the smallest but most functional laptop because, especially in pre-COVID times, I traveled a ton. And so if you're carrying around a big brick, like it just gets tiring. You don't want to have to do that. And so, I've tried to keep it really simple. I actually have a second phone that I carry. It's basically my previous version of the phone that I use now. And I use that to record interviews. which is handy because then if you think of this interview, you can go back and find it pretty quickly. And also if I, occasionally I do a phone interview, and if I'm somewhere where I can do it, I just put my one phone on speaker and record with the other one so that I can get the quotes accurate. So, really I'm a like minimalist laptop and secondary phone guy. And that's pretty much the extent of what I have. Now podcasting has made things different, right? Because now I got this mic, and, I'm just not at the point. I need actually to buy a better laptop for video quality and audio quality. And so, I know some of you have been out there pointing out that I haven't always had the best setup. So I'm going to get a better setup. And so this will probably force me away from my minimalist tendencies. But, I do think less is more, just because you're walking around a lot carrying this stuff. As for stories, I have written multiple stories either on a cell phone, actually way back in the day, just because, some sort of technology fail. I remember going to the Masters a long time ago, and this is this is new when I was new to traveling. And, especially when you're young in your career, I mean, I'm not saying I don't want to do a great job now, but you put a lot of pressure on yourself if you don't have many trips, because you want to get the next trip and you want to be in line and be trusted. And I got to the Masters and had some kind of epic laptop fail. And I had to write an entire story on my BlackBerry, like on deadline and quickly. And I managed to do it. I managed to do it, and I can do it. I mean, the cell phones nowadays, they're really only one step below a laptop as it is. I mean, a lot of them have fairly big screens. It's easy to copy and copy and paste text up and down if you're dealing with quotes or what have you. It's doable. I certainly wouldn't want to do it as standard operating, behavior. But I've had to do that in the pinch in the past. And so I guess that's a long way of saying you can always find it. My biggest nightmare or fear or whatever you want to call it is getting a good interview and then for whatever reason not having it record or having it disappear or losing that phone of mine that has all those interviews. Like, it's not even, this one wasn't such a stressful interview, but like I talked to Frederick Anderson last week for my Inside the NHL column. I didn't actually transcribe that for like a day and a half after. And I was like, oh man, what happens if my phone dies or, cause like I wanted to,
God.
It's funny, like Frederick actually phoned me while I was on a jog. So I missed that call. And then I got back home and I was like, oh, sorry, I missed your call, Freddie. Send him a text. I'm around the rest of the day. Then he phones me like an hour later, right? I'm in the middle of a radio interview. So I couldn't take his radio interview. So I'm already like 2 calls deep on him before he's talked. And then, he was great. We talked for 20, 25 minutes, whatever, caught up a little bit, did the interview. And then I was like, imagine I lost that audio. So, I got to get better at not putting off the transcription because that's I think a journalist's nightmare, especially when you've asked a favor of someone or they've called you or taken time out of their day. You'd hate to lose those quotes or those thoughts.
Oh, for sure. When I was I know for me sometimes like transcribing audio, it's like a process and I don't do it all the time. But when I was in university, I had to take part in some project where essentially I had to go up north for a few days and do a story with a few other journalists on this budworm infestation in this one part of the province. And I had to do interviews with people who spoke no English. And I had to transcribe all that and then translate that from French to English. So after that, I know I never complained about transcribing interviews. I will never, ever do that. And as for my equipment, I just have a ThinkPad laptop. I got my Roots like knapsack in the corner. I only have one phone. I'm not Kevin Gates. I don't have 2 phones yet. Or Kyle Dubas, I guess that's the more relevant meme where he has the 2 phones. Remember that? Remember that photo? Yeah. I got 2
phones, bud.
Yeah. Hey, there we go. I got 2 phones. Anyway, I
should take this opportunity since this question came up, like crowdsource. Yes. Guys, tell me what laptop I should buy.
Yes.
I really, all I need for it is to do these Zooms and to do what Julian and I are doing for the pod. But, I want a better camera, be sure the audio quality is good, and then be able to write stories on it that I'm filing to work. So if you have any inspired decisions, please send them. And also, it's probably not going to be Mac. I know that you're all going to tell me I need to get a Mac, but, we've been through it. I'm an Android guy, so I wouldn't mind if there's something that is not Apple-based.
Damn, you go all the way, not even because I have a Mac, but like, damn, okay. So I respect that. Write that in the comments section, what type of laptop CJ should get. Also, if you are on the SDPN Discord, write it somewhere. I don't know if we can start a whole chat for CJ
Get at
laptop
me. I
recommendations.
need to upgrade my gear here, so I need some help.
All right, next question through the Ask CJ segment, which has already gone off the rails. Sorry, not sorry. This one's from Canuck Child on Twitter. Who has the highest potential right now to become a superstar in the National Hockey League that isn't being talked enough?
It's maybe the talk starting. I think it's Jack Hughes for me, honestly. If you look at the underlying results he's had in New Jersey, they've been pretty good, and those teams haven't been great. His first couple of years in the league. He hasn't put up monster point totals just yet. But you're starting to see him pop a little bit. And, I'm thinking of the overtime goal he scores, throws a stick in the crowd. Like, I think that he's going to deliver on the promise of being a top pick. And so, it depends how we define superstar here, because I think there's truly only like a couple superstars in the league. Like, it just depends where you want to draw the line, right? I think there's probably unanimous agreement on McDavid, McKinnon, Matthews. Draisaitl's got to have a place there. He scored 50 twice already. You might get into sort of like Marner, Barzell type of guys. But my point is, I don't know where, Cale Makar I'm putting there on the blue line.
Crosby, Ovechkin have legacy status.
Yeah. But we're sort of looking at the best players of this moment, and that's not to hate on the guys that have been doing it forever. In fact, we showered Ovi with love the last pod, but
we did.
If we're looking for like who are the real impact players, I don't necessarily see Jack Hughes getting in like that top 3 category, but I think he's going to be really good, and maybe this season, like maybe his moment's arrived. That same Larry Brooks column that you mentioned from Sunday, he talked him up for Team USA for the Olympics. And, what's interesting about that is with Jack Eichel being unable to participate because of his injury status, Austin Matthews is obviously that team's number 1 center at the Olympics. But after that, they don't have elite guys down the middle. Like Dylan Larkin's probably the second line center for Team USA. No hate on Dylan, really good player, but it's not like Canada being able to come at you with McDavid and Crosby. And like, I don't even know, Canada's so many centers. I'm not sure who's playing center. Like, is Mark Scheifele a center on that team, or is he a winger? Anyway, we could go on that tangent, but I do think Team USA could use a little more help below Matthews at that center position. And so if Jack Hughes is ready right now, that's a great development for them heading into Beijing. And I certainly think, for me, he's someone I look at that's going to get there in the next year or two anyway.
Are those Olympic long lists out anywhere? I didn't see them. Are they going to be out anywhere?
No. So part of the agreement was that they won't be publicized. And my understanding is like, I can't even call up someone at Hockey Canada and be like, yeah, but maybe whisper me a few names. Like, I think it's pretty, I don't know the language in that. And obviously some names will be out there. Someone's agent will tell someone, hey, just so you know, my player's on Canada's long list. Like, a few names will probably be identified beyond the ones that we just already know intuitively that are going to be included. But I would be shocked if you ever saw all 55 names from any country published, and especially in Canada. I think they're sensitive to the deal that was made. But it's 50 players, skaters, and 5 goaltenders that are part of that list. And anyone not on that list, which went in on Friday, can't play for Team Canada in Beijing.
Okay. Well, I figured.
And that's what they don't want that to be the story, right? They published the story. We're going to go to who's the 51st skater, like who should have been included and wasn't, and then ask for his response. Like, I get why they want to keep this semi-private and all that. And the players, I should mention too, Julian, on that long list, like they lose some of their freedoms now. Like, they're subject to different drug testing because there's a different standard for the Olympics. And so that's part of their life. They got to fill out all this paperwork and everything. Like it's, obviously they want to represent their countries, but to look at it another way, there's 30 players on that long list that are going to go through all that and not get to go to Beijing. And so, I think that they want to recognize, that they just don't want that out there, I think.
Thank you for answering. The next question I was going to ask is that do the players who are on that long list, do they know that they're on it, or if it's just like a list that's just out there and then they just cut from that? But if they're going to be subjected to different testing, I'd imagine they would know they're on the list. Yeah,
and the players had the right to decline it too. That was part of the agreement. So,
I didn't know that.
I have no knowledge of anyone who did that, but I do know that they had the right. If Hockey Canada came to you and said, "Hey, we want to put you on our long list," you could say, "Do you know what? I don't think I'm going to make the team. I don't want to go through all the drug testing or what have you, the extra work with that. Thanks, but no thanks." I I can't even guess. I have no idea if anyone did that, but the players did have that right if they chose to do that.
So you know what I think someone might end up doing, or I figured someone would have done it by now. We see people do these mock lineups with the actual team that's being brought there. What if someone went through all the trouble and said, these are the 55 players that should be on Canada's log list? Like, what if someone actually does it?
I mean, we got a pretty passionate fan base. I wouldn't be surprised if someone did that. I mean, I once dropped a nugget on the SDP in which I gave like 2 parameters hinting at a guy the Leafs might trade for this past offseason. And people like spent days like narrowing down every player it could be or couldn't be and then speculating on it. And this is a true story. On my birthday on Saturday night, I went to the Leafs Senators game. And then met a couple friends out for a drink after the game. And I was waiting in line to get seated. And, a guy comes up. He's like, can you tell me who that guy was? Like, I listened to the SDP. Like, is it safe yet? So like people don't underestimate what the people are willing to do. And B, they don't forget. So I won't be playing that game too much anymore. Cause some people got dangerously close to figuring out who I was pointing to.
Boy.
Yeah. And well, it's not fair. Like I was trying to have fun and I was, telling the truth. It was information I'd heard, but it certainly wasn't anything that I had clearance to be going public with or that it was really more just trying to give a nugget to the fans, but I might have flew a little close to the sun on that one, put it that way.
Okay. I won't put you in trouble on that anymore. And I'll go back to the rest of the questions on
I will say this, if the Leafs ever trade for this player, because they didn't in the offseason, I will identify it then. And I know that that's maybe no fun to everyone, but I will clear or if it maybe one more year passes and it's like just something that clearly isn't going to happen, I will one day be honest about this. But until then, it lives along with our pilot episode. Like it lives in the darkness so far.
Yeah, that won't see the light of day yet. This next one, it's more of a funny one, but I'm really curious what your answer to this will be. This is from Andrew Saldana on Twitter. Hello, King. Do you know what the J in Jeff Carter's middle name stands for? I don't know.
Does he have J as a middle name?
I just assumed that he did, and I just figured since you know everything that was the case.
That's not my ballywhack. I don't know.
I have
Jeffrey
no
John Carter. I don't know. Jeffrey James Carter.
I think Hockey Reference normally has like players' full names. So maybe this is something we could just discover for ourselves as we do this.
I don't know.
It doesn't have it there.
I barely know anyone's middle name, man. Like you got to be in my tight inner circle for me to know your middle name. So I definitely don't know some random NHL player's middle name.
Okay. It was worth a shot. Jeffrey J. Carter. And I don't know what the J is for. Well, it was at least worth a shot. Thank you, Andrew Saldana, for the question.
You know what? I'll get to the bottom of that one, though. I'll figure that out for you.
Whatever the middle name is, we'll have that as a future title for an episode of the CJ Show. JM85 on Discord says, what was a trade from any year that you thought was going to happen and it was pretty much guaranteed that ended up not happening?
I really thought Erik Karlsson was going to get traded to Vegas. And, that was pretty strongly rumored at the time. You're going to have to help me out with the years, but it was the trade deadline before he actually got moved to San Jose.
Yeah.
It went down right to 3:00 Eastern and they just weren't able to get it done. I actually think the package, it's funny because there's like 4 teams that were involved in multiple transactions, right? So Montreal traded Max Pacioretty to Vegas.
Yes.
But San Jose was interested in Pacioretty. And I think that a lot of what San Jose ended up trading to Ottawa for Karlsson was on the table for Pacioretty. Not every last detail. Obviously, at that time, Karlsson did get more. I mean, he was, not far removed from his most recent Norris Trophy. But there was a lot of interplay between Vegas, San Jose, Montreal, and Ottawa on those maneuvers at the time. And I really thought, we've seen the Golden Knights there. That's an aggressive organization. And I say that in the best way possible. I think, some people, obviously, fans got their feelings hurt, obviously, by the way things down with Marc-Andre Fleury. But if you're cheering for that team, you have no question that ownership and management is turning over every rock they can to try to win. And so I thought that was a deal that was going to happen. It didn't end up going down. That's probably the one that sticks in my mind from the last couple of years.
Okay, that's really interesting. I think LA, I was also interested in Max Pacioretty as well.
Yeah, he didn't want to sign the extension there, and so that killed the deal. That was at the Dallas draft. 2018.
Yes, that was. Yeah, because that I think was well before Pacioretty was traded, like at the end of that summer. So that was 2018. Now you're jogging my memory as well.
Well, it's just interesting because Vegas and San Jose at that time were two teams that were trying to get as much big game talent as they could. And they were floating the same names that moved in other deals because they'd identified what they were willing to trade for that talent, right? So, like, I'm pretty sure was Chris Tierney in the deal to Ottawa for Karlsson. For example.
Pull up the deal. Let me just pull up the deal real quick because I don't remember the exact details offhand. And yes, if you're watching on YouTube, I am Googling this like on my phone. So,
but think too, like from those trades. Vegas made 3 first-round picks the first year they became into existence. One of them is Nick Suzuki. So Suzuki ends up in Montreal in the Pacioretty deal. Eric Brandstrom was another one. Brandstrom goes to Ottawa. At the time, I think Brandstrom was thought to be the better prospect initially. Probably the more desired one at that point in time by a lot of people. We're not looking at it the same way today. Eric Brandstrom's still kind of a question mark, and Nick Suzuki's getting paid a lot of money starting next season and is a big part of the Montreal Canadiens' future down the middle. So it's just interesting that those teams had a lot kind of going on between them. And as you can tell, my brain's a bit scrambled by some of the specific details because there was so much crossover. But I do know that the Karlsson trade to San Jose could have been similar to what a Pacioretty trade to San Jose. Like, again, not the exact same, but some crossover in those returns.
Some of the details in there, Chris Tierney, Rudolph Balcers, defenseman Dylan DeMello, who is not in Ottawa or San Jose, is in Winnipeg now. The rights to unsigned forward Joshua Norris, a first-round pick in the 2019 draft or 2020, a second-round pick in 2019, and 2 conditional draft picks. So that's those.
It wouldn't have been as many picks. It wouldn't be as many picks in the Montreal side. And I don't know if it was Norris. Like I wish I could remember that. But yeah, fans love those questions. But like it's funny because over time, you just some of it gets beaten out of your mind. You know what I mean? But definitely I thought Karlsson was going to be a Golden Knight.
That's really interesting.
And alternate history. I mean, think about it. Erik Karlsson, obviously, unfortunately, he hasn't been healthy. He's not the player he was. I mean, for me, he's one of my favorite players I've ever watched, honestly, when he was at his peak. And, but Vegas doesn't get him. Instead, they end up signing Alex Pietrangelo. And I think that's worked out quite well for them. It's funny sometimes the decisions you don't make or that don't come together, how it does change history. Because had they got Karlsson, I don't think Pietrangelo will be playing in Vegas today.
Last question for you, Siege. This one's from Joe Patente on Twitter. Do you have any update on the Vitali Kravtsov trade request, the New York Rangers prospect? Interested teams, anything like that? And what are your thoughts on the New York Rangers possibly losing another top 10 draft pick due to mismanagement?
Well, it's tough. I mean, I don't know if it's mismanagement in this case. I guess it's fair for the questioner to infer that. I still don't have the full dynamic of what's going on here. And I do think it's possible maybe the bridge gets repaired. I mean, this, it doesn't look good today because, last I heard on Kravtsov, he's in Russia now, didn't refuse to go and report to the Hartford Wolfpack. But, it's happened before, remember Jesse Puljujärvi, he's looking pretty good right now in the Oilers. And he spent a year over in Finland and looked for a long time. Like he'd be dealt, like nothing's done until it's done. And especially with a player that young, I think ultimately the Rangers have to get something of substance back. And I don't think that that's on the table right now, right? There's lots of teams picking up the phone and feeling out Chris Drury on how little they can potentially give, to get that lottery ticket coming their way. But, I don't get the feeling that this one necessarily is done in terms of the Rangers. So, tough spot for the kid. It reminds you of the Elias Anderson situation. He was, I believe, the 7th or 8th overall pick a couple years ago by the Rangers. Ends up getting traded for the 60th overall pick to LA because things just didn't work out there with him and the team. And he'd gone back to Sweden to play for a time. And so to have 2 top 10 picks that close together and potentially kind of leave with nothing would be a difficult outcome, especially because the Rangers have gone through a rebuild. I mean, I think that they hope it's in the past now. But part of those rebuilds, you're hoping to hit on those picks. And to the point where, yes, of course, and the number one thing is you want those players to star for you, but at minimum, you want to have something that you're trading for something big. Like you want to have a real asset. And right now, if they're trading Kravtsov, as talented as he is, as young as he is, he's a bit of a depreciated asset because of how this has gone down. And that's very much what we saw in the Elias Anderson case.
Yes, that's very true. And that's going to do it for the Ask CJ portion of the CJ show. We got through all the questions. There were some extra ones kind of sprinkled in there, but really great questions. Again, every Monday we're going to do this. So please send us questions over Twitter or send us questions on our Discord. And with that, unless there is anything else you wanted to plug in, that's going to do it for this Monday edition of the CJ show. Once again, we failed to reach the 30-minute mark, but that's okay, because this is what the people want. And it's not as if we're like sitting back and just talking about like, hey, you know, some random filler stuff. We've been able to fill this time with important hockey talk. You should come away from these podcasts informed, whether it's 30 minutes or 90 minutes. It doesn't really matter.
Right. It's not like we were like talking about Succession's debut last night or anything like that, although I did enjoy that. But we're hitting you with the hockey goods is all I'm saying.
At least. Maybe at some other point we can trade lists on TV shows that we watch. But that could be a whole like 20 minutes of itself. I don't want to make this podcast.
Mine is so short, man. All I do is watch hockey, a little bit of football, and Succession and Ted Lasso.
Ooh, you watched Ted Lasso?
I haven't watched the new season yet, so no spoilers. I know.
Okay.
I'm going to binge it soon, but the problem is there's hockey every night, and that's not a problem. It's a great problem to have, but you know, time is going through the hourglass, Julian.
Your list of TV shows is as long as mine, and I'm going to stop myself here before I end up spoiling season 2 for you. For CJ, I'm Julian saying so long. Thursday, brand new episode of the Chris Johnston Show will be out. We may have a new segment on that particular episode and Thursdays going forward. So stay tuned for that. And thanks so much for listening, and peace.
Peace.
The Chris Johnston Show. Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JK McKenzie.